Hey, KU fans, welcome back to another episode of the KU Sports Hour here at KUsports.com. And minutes before we hit record on this podcast, we found out news that Kansas and Gonzaga are officially going to play basketball this year. Not on November 25th like a lot of people were reporting, but one day later, November 26th. Happy Thanksgiving. I mean, why not, right? Let's just get to it. You can have an early lunch, watch some basketball, fall asleep, eat again. But, yeah, no, it'll be down in Florida at Fort Myers. That part was absolutely right, but not November 25th. November 26th, KU Gonzaga. And then they'll play on the 27th against St. Joseph's in that little multi-team event down in Fort Myers, Florida. So, Benton, I know we've talked a little bit about this, but, man, I mean, Thanksgiving, middle of the day, maybe not the best thing in the world, but a pretty good matchup. I mean, you can't really have better than that.
Yeah. Our guy, Nick Schwert, had the great tweet just before we were going on, something to the effect of, hey, at least I don't have to watch whatever garbage NFC East game is on.
Yeah, you looked it up, right? It's
yeah, like, right? Cowboys, Redskins.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh,
that one, usually you can at least enjoy those NFL Thanksgiving games because of fantasy football purposes, but that game might not even have that. I mean, if you're playing any Dallas Cowboys right now, I am sorry, my friend. You got any?
I do. Zeke's in my lineup firmly.
As I said, I'm sorry, my friend.
Yeah, it's tough.
It happens, but yeah, it'll be a great
much better television, I think, over
no
on
doubt.
ESPN or whatever it's going to be on.
Fox Sports.
Fox Sports.
There you go.
My mind is blown now.
Let's not confuse people. It's already been a busy enough week with confusion.
But yeah, I mean, like I was just thinking about it, like, obviously you would probably rather see this game in like March or maybe February, like late kind of in the middle of the season, just because, you kind of see both teams at their best. But
yeah, right.
This could be just as entertaining. I mean, just because of the quality of players on both rosters. And I mean, everybody in this game has just been like rearing to play for like what seems like 10 years at this point, because the season ended abruptly. And so it should be awesome. It's a great way to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's as good as it gets. I mean, it's as good as the Champions Classic ever could ask to be. Not the history and tradition of all those programs, but as far as two of the best teams in the country slugging it out without much time to prepare for each other, without much time, as you mentioned, to get a feel for who they are. I mean, I just look back at that KU Duke game last year. KU was so much better than Duke. And really they were better in that game except for one area, and that was the turnovers. When you turn it over 28 times, you're not going to beat anybody. And so, that's what you get in some of those early games like that, especially against other high-quality opponents. What I think we'll all hope for is maybe that we can get something that resembles KU Dayton and Maui last year, because that is where early season basketball is at. That was a thing of beauty. But again, they had 3-4 weeks to kind of play a few games, work out some of the kinks, and get to a little bit more of their flow by that point when they played Dayton. So we'll see. But either way, the fans have been wanting this one forever. I'm sure Gonzaga's fans will be fired up. I don't think there will be any fans in the building, but just people watching and having watch parties and, celebrating with family. That's what we do on Thanksgiving. So I guess that's what everyone will do with their basketball families as well.
Hey, wear your mask to those watch parties, people.
There you go. Nice little statement there, Ben. I appreciate
it. PSA.
Yeah, that's solid. That was solid.
Also a PSA, Texans-Lions is the 11:30 game. So Nick Schwert lied.
Well,
I'm
kind of disappointed. I'm sorry
not surprised, really.
Live on a podcast.
Yeah, wow. I'm glad you look at that. Look at journalism at work there.
I know. Dang. That's a great point, though. Like the Lions always play first, right?
Yeah.
That's tradition. Correct?
That is real tradition. And
yeah.
then you get the late lunch Cowboys game.
Yeah.
That's when you want to go to sleep anyway. Yeah.
And then you get the good game on Sunday, or the night game.
There you go. Right. Wow. So Lions, Texans, that'll be more exciting, I think. I mean, that's not too bad. I think that you got some
Is Megatron still out there? Calvin Johnson still playing? Okay,
Urban
cool.
Moore, you remember him? He's playing. So, all right. Well, it'll be interesting. And then, as I mentioned, they'll play St. Joe on the 27th and then come home. And then as of now, the next game on their schedule will be the Champions Classic, Kansas versus Kentucky. rumored to be in Indianapolis, but as Self told us on Thursday, nothing's official there. He does know that it'll be neutral site somewhere. So I would say Indy's a probable location for that game. And so right away, you're talking about 2 out of your first 3 games against Gonzaga and Kentucky. Preseason top 10, maybe preseason top 5. KU's going to be preseason top 10. I mean, after missing out on a lot of basketball in the postseason last year and waiting, like Benton said, 10 years, Kansas fans are going to get thrown right into it fast. What I think is interesting is they still have the potential to schedule another game. Right now, as things currently set with that becoming official, they are sitting on 26 games. The NCAA is allowing 27 games this year. But it doesn't sound like they know if they're going to play that 27th game or schedule that 27th game, just because sometimes it's hard to figure that stuff out. I mean, right now, everybody's still trying to piece their schedules together and get them announced, and there just may not be a game to be had. If it is, it probably won't be quite the caliber of Kentucky and Gonzaga and Creighton and Tennessee and those teams. But my guess is they won't play it. I just think, why force it? I mean, you know, take the extra time to practice or downtime or whatever it is, because you haven't had a ton of that this preseason. So we did talk to these guys, a few players and Coach Self earlier this week. And really, I just want to get your thoughts, both of you, on the newcomers. I mean, you know, we know what Ochai looks like. We know what Marcus Garrett looks like. To some extent, we know what David McCormick and even Christian Brown and guys like that look like. But it's a bunch of new faces going to play some pretty important roles. And I'm curious, for both of you, who are you looking forward to watching most? Who are you most excited about? And who do you think KU fans should be most excited about? Shane, take it away. Answer those 3 questions like you're on a game show and your life depends on it.
Well, I already forgot all 3 questions. I think the obvious answer, though, is Bryce Thompson, right? Who KU fans should be the most excited about. And I think, personally, I'm excited to see that he seems to be the player getting the most praise, you know, in the offseason. And obviously, he was the player that we got to talk to yesterday and kind of mentioned how, you know, Self treats him pretty much similarly to recruiting him and coaching him this year. But no, I think
he was lying, by the way.
I know.
Right? I mean, like, there's no way. You recruit a kid, you tell him, you're going to be great. We can't wait to have you. He gets in practice and he goes the wrong way with the ball, and you don't say that stuff. So
maybe he doesn't go the wrong way with the ball. So
that's a better point. That is a great point. We can get in on that. We can dive deep on that one, because Bryce Thompson, right now, one of his top attributes is definitely his IQ, his basketball intelligence. Terrific player in that regard, but other areas as well. So continue with question 1 or 2, whichever one you're on.
I think that was pretty much what my answer was, though. I think Bryce Thompson should be the player that KU fans are most excited about. But, you know, in general, player or fans should be excited about this team in general, the way they talked about this team, because, you know, Self kept mentioning how this team is going to be balanced. This team's going to have a lot of depth. And so there are going to be a lot of pieces that fans could be excited about.
Yeah. Benton, what about you? Any other leans for you on players you're looking forward to seeing?
Well, I mean, I definitely am looking forward to seeing Bryce Thompson, and I thought he was impressive. I hadn't really kind of seen an interview with him or anything like that. I'd only read stuff that he had said, but he was great up there at the podium when it was his turn to come and talk to the media yesterday. Like the way he carried himself, confident, comfortable. And then obviously we kind of know what a great scorer he was down in Oklahoma before coming up to KU. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what he's going to bring this year. He seems like a guy that can really, you know, put up some points as a freshman, and that's not always the easiest to do on a Bill Self coach team. You know, he doesn't mind sending guys to the bench for mistakes and, you know, making them kind of earn their spots in the rotation. But to me, he seems like a guy that can handle that, even if it happens. But another thing, I mean, I'm going to kind of cheat on this and say these redshirt freshmen should be interesting to see.
100%. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Wilson played like 1 minute last year or something like that.
He's a newcomer in every sense of the word, other than the fact that you know who he is and he's been here. Mm-hmm. But as far as a basketball contributor, definite newcomer.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, him and DeJuan Harris kind of have that added boost of, you know, being around the program. You know, you're doing the strength and conditioning stuff, you're practicing those types of things. Obviously with Jalen getting his season cut short, that made it a little bit more difficult. And obviously he would have played last year, so different circumstances than Harris. But I thought it was interesting that Jalen Wilson said he'd lost a bunch of weight. And I mean, I was like, well, did he really need to do that? But then he talked about how much more explosive he is. He has better bounce and probably, just much more effective as a basketball player because of that. So
no doubt.
I'm interested to see what he looks like.
Yeah, and go back and look at the pictures too. I mean, we didn't get a ton because, like you said, he didn't play a lot last year, but you see it. I mean, he was still carrying maybe a little bit of even baby weight or whatever they call that, and part of it was the hair too. I mean, his hair is so much heavier that it's just total transformation. But I think you see it. I mean, he leaned up. He said he lost 14 pounds of fat. So how do you do that? You build muscle, right? And that's the easiest way to do it. So he looks lean. He looks more athletic, more explosive, and I think he never lost confidence. So I think this is a guy that's really exciting. And, of course, DeJuan Harris too. But, yeah, I mean, really, Shane, you said it, man. The whole thing here is just exciting because they've got so many different pieces and so much versatility. And, Benton, you wrote this the other day about just the balance that this team's probably going to have offensively especially, but what a departure from what it was last year. Basically last year, if Udoka didn't get his and Devon didn't get his, this team was going to struggle to get to 50. And that's probably not the case this year. Number one, I don't think they'll ever struggle to get to 50. Number two, I think they have a bunch of guys where if one guy doesn't get his or another guy doesn't get theirs, there's two or three guys behind them or next to them that can go out and pick up the slack. So I think that should be a lot of fun for fans to watch for sure. But I just keep thinking about how much fun that's got to be for Bill Self and his coaching staff. I mean, that's just – maybe there's something to be said about, having everything set and what you're going to do and it's automatic and you just fine tune it and you get it cranking and it just runs like they did last year by the end of the season. But I still think that the versatility and everything's got to be a lot better. Ben, what did you write in that blog about just the balanced scoring from this year's team? I think you asked the question, right? I mean, is there a go-to scorer? Even though there's all this depth, is there a go-to scorer?
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't sound like there is, and it sounds like they're fine with that. I mean, we'll see once we get into the season. If you're down a point on the road with 20 seconds left, you might need a go-to score. But if they are as kind of versatile and where they trust everybody like they kind of say they are at this point, then it might not matter. Maybe you're much more difficult to guard as a team if you actually can have five guys that any one of them could be the guy who's scoring that decisive basket. I don't know. I think it makes sense though, because I mean, what McCormick averaged like 5 points a game or somewhere in that range last year. Like he's not going to come out and score 18 this year. I mean,
he may get the opportunity to.
Yeah, well, maybe, or
but
maybe
that doesn't mean he will. You're right.
Yeah, he's if they give him the ball, he might just put up enough shots to make it happen.
Right.
But yeah, I just looking at kind of the makeup of the roster, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Marcus Garrett's their leading scorer at 14, or McCormick is at like 13, and then they have like 4 or 5 guys scoring double figures.
Sure. Yeah.
Ochai can do that.
Christian Brown, 12.
I think Christian Brown can do that too. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Thompson comes in and averages like 10 points a game. So, and then, you just around the edges, you're getting other guys chipping in. Some days it'll be, Jalen's day to put up points, and other days maybe Brown gets super hot and he puts up 20, 25 because he knocks down a bunch of threes. I mean, that still works. You don't necessarily need a guy like Sharon Collins or that type of player to be a successful team, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I thought was really interesting too, was Self just talking a lot yesterday about not just the lack of a go-to scorer, but McCormick sort of being a guy that they're going to make sure he gets touches, right? I mean, and that's not necessarily, I didn't take it this way, and correct me if you guys did, but that's not necessarily because he's thinking, oh, we have to get McCormick, the individual, touches and shots. That's just because of the way KU plays, where they want to run through their post players and so because of that, he's going to get that opportunity. Now, as you mentioned, Benton David's shown no problem throwing up shots during his first 2 years at Kansas. So it will be really interesting to see how far he's come in that area, how much he's matured, and just in general, what he looks like down there. I mean, he's a junior now. He's been around. He started a bunch of games. He did more as a freshman, but he should have plenty of sort of his feel and his feet under him for how things go here, and he should be ready for this opportunity, I would think. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. The idea of a go-to scorer, like you mentioned, is fun because you said it, down one on the road, who do you go to? And I don't think, I mean, we don't know a lot of these guys. We haven't seen a lot of them play yet anyway, but I don't think there's an obvious answer just yet, but I can guarantee that the ball will be in Marcus Garrett's hands to start that, whatever it is. Now, if that means he turns the corner and gets to the free throw line or gets to the rim or dishes to somebody, I mean, that's where it's going to start. So your go-to is as much that. Like, there's your guy that's going to make it happen, whatever it is and whoever it leads to. But other than that, I mean, I think, yeah, it could be a lot of guys. And that's what's kind of fun about this team. I thought it was interesting, too, that Self pointed out that he doesn't feel like they're that athletic. Because you look at these guys, a bunch of 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" wing-type players, and you automatically think athletes and athleticism. And I think it's all relative. Like, they're definitely athletic. Their standard there is pretty high. I mean, it's not like they're stiff and robotic. I mean, these guys are terrific athletes, but I think that, they're not the Kentucky type of athlete that maybe you see. But they are long, and I thought that was one of the coolest things that he talked about yesterday, is just how they're going to probably cater a lot of what they do defensively, especially to that length and not as much athleticism. Do you think this team, either one of you or both of you, do you think this team will be better offensively or defensively? I know, again, it's way too early, but we're just kind of setting a baseline right now for what to expect. And I don't know if I have a feel for that, but I'm curious. Do you guys?
I'm assuming they'll be better offensively. That team last year was stellar defensively,
Right.
and I mean, they had 3 special pieces, and they lost 2 of them.
Right.
I mean, Dotson and Udoka, as much as they were, the guys who had to score for that team, they were also such a big part of why that team just didn't give up points.
Sure.
And obviously Marcus Garrett is a huge part of that too. But when you have 3 guys that are that locked in on defense that you can trust and count on. I mean, Udoka was so active, moving his feet on the perimeter and recovering and just kind of keeping people from even wanting to drive into the paint, even though he wasn't necessarily a terrific shot blocker. Like, he's so big and he was moving so well. They're just like, there weren't ways a lot of times for guys to get inside to even put up shots. And then Garrett's great at that too, just locking guys down and taking away drives. And Dotson is so fast. I mean, I just can't imagine this team will be able to play that type of defense just because, and maybe that's where, when Self mentioned they're not that athletic. Well, yeah, you lost Dotson, who was insanely fast, and you lost Udoka, who really could play above the rim and moved his feet great for a 7-footer. So maybe that's where we'll see the difference in athleticism.
Yeah, I wrote about this, and I know, Benton, we talked about it, but the NBA draft, by the way, is also this month. And Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike are setting historic marks with their pre-combine and pre-draft workouts. I mean, what did it say? Doak had a 37-inch vertical?
Yeah, was it 35-inch standing, or maybe it was 37? I don't remember the figure off the top
and
of my
like
head.
a 7'7" wingspan, and he's already 7 feet tall. I mean, that's insane. I mean, I think the thing about Udoka that people will realize, present company included, is the farther away we get from when he was actually playing at Kansas, the more people will realize that he's one of the best players to come through here in a long time. I mean, it wasn't that way from start to finish, but his senior year and his ability, just skill set and physical tools, holy cow. I mean, that guy was so freaking talented, and he was an impossible guard, and he gave KU so many advantages. I mean, yeah, that guy was incredible. So anyway, 37-inch vertical to go with all those other tools, and then and then Dotson's getting down the court, 3/4 court sprint in 3 seconds. I mean, no surprise. Anybody that's watched him here the last couple of years knows that that's what he does. But my God, I don't even think I could get out of this chair in 3 seconds. So that's pretty incredible. And then, his vertical, I think, increased by 3 inches over his time at Kansas. And they say his shot's better. I'm looking forward to the Masters in November, and I'm looking forward to the NBA draft in November. It's just so weird. It feels like early Christmas. It's like these little bonus sports trinkets that we're getting. And I think both of those will be cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing where those guys get drafted. I think they both have a shot at late first round. I really do. If you had to say one or the other is going to go first round, I think it'd be Doak at this point. But there's still a chance they could both go early second. But the intrigue is exciting, and just finding out where they might go and how they might fit, because I think they both have a chance to play important roles and be key reserves for a good team for a number of years in the NBA. So that'll be fun to follow. That's November 18th, right?
Yeah, like a Wednesday, just a couple weeks from now, right?
Yeah, I think
Wednesday night. Yeah,
I think it's the 18th. So we'll have some coverage of that. Not quite the coverage we do in June when it just carries the whole month, but we'll be paying attention, and it'll be fun. So anyway, coming back, Shane, I cut you off. Coming back, offense or defense? KU's offense or defense going to be better this year? I mean, based on what little we all know now, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to shock everybody by disagreeing with Benton.
What?
I don't know. Again, it's mostly because we haven't seen much or any of this team, so we don't really know. But I took this as a question of what is the strength of this team. That's the way I took the question anyways. And I just have a hard time believing that a Marcus Garrett-led team strength is not going to be on the defensive end. It may be in a different facet compared to last year, like they don't have a shot blocker. They're not playing above the rim by any means. But you mentioned the length earlier. They're still going to get in passing lanes. They're still going to lead to transition points. So I think that's going to be the style of this team, if I had to take a guess, because Ochai and Marcus Garrett were a big part of that last year. I imagine they'll be a big part of it this year. So, and Marcus Garrett's just going to lock down the best player, no matter what the position is, at every given night. So I think the strength of this team will be the defense. But it's so close to call that I really am only saying this to disagree with Benton and have a different opinion.
I like it. And I think that your last point is beautiful. I think it is really close. I think it's if they play 26 games, it could be 13 times it's defense that carries them, 13 times it's offense that carries them. And I hope that math adds up. But I think it is that close. Their versatility on both ends. But your point about Marcus Garrett, I mean, this is his team, and I think what gotten overlooked a little bit is because of how good he was, because of how good Devon Dotson was, because of how good Doak was. Ochai Agbaji's a good defender too, and he takes a lot of pride in playing that way as well. And he's going to want to keep up with Marcus Garrett and try to be on that level. So. That's two pretty good pieces of your defense returning, and you're adding a lot of length to it. And DeJuan Harris, he's no Devon Dotson, but they tell me everything I've heard, man, that this kid's hands are just unbelievable. And so he doesn't have to be Devon Dotson in 80% of the ways, but if he's Devon Dotson in the ways of pressuring guys and getting steals and creating havoc for opposing ball handlers, then you're not going to lose much there either. So it'll be really interesting to see. There's no doubt about it. And we've got all kinds of time to talk about basketball, but they keep coming, man. These Zoom interviews with the press conferences and the players, I mean, it's like I think it's really easy for everybody because they just show up and they do their thing and then they're out. And we just sit in these almost exact three same spots and talk to them. And so they just keep coming. And so it does, now that they're announcing the Gonzaga game, now that we've been getting consistent basketball interview access, it does feel like basketball season has arrived, and it's November. I mean, that's when it arrives. So no surprise, but we do still have a little football to cover, and we'll get a game in, and then they'll get a bye week, their third bye week in a season full of much needed buys and time off. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens this weekend. I don't think anybody thinks KU is going to go down to Oklahoma 2:30 on Saturday and really compete or be in that game. I think Oklahoma's maybe after back-to-back losses earlier this year starting to find themselves a little bit and also charging hard toward a chance to get back in the playoff conversation. And the only way to do that is to beat the brakes off of people. So poor Kansas, but so I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time breaking down the game necessarily, because I think Benton will do plenty of that on Saturday and all that you can stomach. But 38 points is the line.
Oof.
I mean, I've bet on
points.
Basketball lines that are lower than that. I mean, in basketball they could score 100 points. I mean, it's just incredible. First question about that: is it too high, Shane? You're our resident degenerate. What do you think? I mean, that's an absurd amount of points. I looked it up, and maybe you did too. Probably you did too. OU's only won by 38 one time this year, and that was in their opening game of the season. I think it was 48-0 over Missouri State.
Mm-hmm.
Whether KU could beat Missouri State's another argument.
That's the big question.
But it was 48. And then other than that, they did beat Texas Tech last week by 34. And then they beat Texas by 8, and they beat TCU by 19, and then 2 losses. So I don't know. 38's a large number.
I thought 28 was too large, and then Iowa State covered that number last weekend. Granted, KU was only down 16 with the ball with 6 minutes to go. So I feel like that I was on the right side, at least spread-wise.
Let me interrupt you. What was that about? I mean, everybody, the late touchdown that Iowa State got, I was reading, I think, Twitter and stuff that people were talking about point differential. Does that matter for the Big 12 championship game or something? Is that the tiebreaker in the Big 12 standings? Do either of you know? I just saw people talking about that point, the scoring points, like they weren't down on Iowa State for kind of quote unquote running it up, because they say that's what they need. They need the points.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure, just because KU is so far out of the picture for like that type of thing. Like I haven't gone out of my way to research that type of thing. That does make sense. If a point differential could come into play if you have a tie and you're trying to figure out which 2 teams get to play in that Big 12 title game, that would make sense to me. But also, like, Iowa State had in its backups on that last drive and then just scored in like 3 plays. I mean, it's not like they were going out there like gunning with their
throwing
starters.
The ball.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, timeout.
So
timeout.
Right. Yeah, you got to make stops late in the game.
Yeah. Right. I think the broadcast maybe mentioned it, but I don't know if they knew the answer either to the point differential question. But the second to last touchdown was a Breece Hall touchdown run that was just Parker missing a tackle, and then the last one was with the backups in. So, and that was a total like 4 plays on the last 2 drives. So it's not like they were going out of their way to run the score. But no, I was just thinking the spread in general was too large last week. And then I'm reminded of how often KU offensive drives end in 3 and out, which means the other team's allowed to run up the score a little bit, and a team like Oklahoma definitely can run up the score. So 38 might be the right number when you factor in the KU offense not being able to stay on the field.
Scoring differential is a tiebreaker. I'm just
go.
looking at it right now. The tiebreaker procedures. It's not at the top of the list, but it's pretty high up there. So
sure, it's all tied up at the top right now. And I mean, this weird season that everybody's experiencing, it could be a 4 or 5 way tie by the time the season ends. Again, Oklahoma's 4-2. 3-2 in conference, and they're playing to get back into the mix, and so that's interesting. I'm glad you looked it up. Obviously, Shane and I could not be bothered to do that, nor could the broadcasters last week. So, thank God for Benton Smith. Like I always tell everybody, thank God for Benton Smith. Benton, you think it's too high? I mean, you look at it and it's like KU struggles to score, right? So that's part of it. If you hold them to 10 or 3, you don't have to get to 50 or 60. And then it's only 21 points each half to get to 42. It doesn't sound crazy, but goodness gracious. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's Vegas is so good at just like finding that number. And I mean, that one is so perfect because you could easily see like Oklahoma putting up a ton of points and then, late in the game, like last week they played Tech and they took out Rattler like early in the third quarter because the game was over. And then, Tech scores some points and, it ends up looking somehow closer. I mean, they still lost by 32 or whatever, but it ends up looking not as bad as it actually was because of things like that. So it's just a tricky, and this is why I never gamble because of things exactly like this. So I mean, it's just how devastating would it be to lose your money on, betting on KU to lose by 38 plus, and and then they barely cover because of some late game touchdown.
Let me cut you off because you can gamble and have a lot of fun, and I think Shane and I both can kind of sing the praises of that. You just should never bet on anything involving KU football.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You just start there. Then it opens the whole world up. But yeah, I think real quick, we got about 5 minutes left. I mean, what do you make of this game? What is most important for KU this week? Let's not talk big picture. Let's not talk staying positive or playing freshmen or grinding it out or whatever. Literally to be in this game or even hang around for a little while, what do they have to do?
Well, they've got to find something on offense. The offense has been bad all season. Their run game, they tried to establish that against Iowa State, and just nothing worked against that Iowa State front. And I mean, if you can't run the ball, and it doesn't seem like they really can at this point, then what are you going to do? Because, you're also down multiple receivers. I don't think Stephon Robinson is coming back anytime soon. And that's Robinson and Parchment complementing each other is such a big part of, what helped Stanley have a good year last year.
Right.
Having those two guys out there at the same time. And unless something miraculous happens, we might not see Robinson the rest of this year. Maybe he's a couple weeks away, but at that point, do you risk?
So at the end of the season, back? Right? Yeah.
So yeah, you just have to sustain some drives somehow. They lead the nation in punting, punt attempts per game. They're tied for first, averaging 7 punts a game because offense can't stay on the field. So you just have to sustain some drives and put up some points. You're not going to put up enough points to beat Oklahoma. So on the other end of that, you have to maybe create some breaks for yourself on defense with takeaways, or get a special teams and defensive score, and that might make it competitive. But OU, those Lincoln Riley teams, and obviously we know they don't have like necessarily a Heisman winning quarterback this year, which is a little different. But they put up points. OU always has great athletes at the skill positions. They always have a good offensive line, and they always put up a ton of points. So I don't see this game being competitive.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't argue with any of that, or don't disagree with any of it. Barry Trammell from the Oklahoma media royalty, right? He texted me earlier today, and he asked, "Hey, do you guys know?" Because he didn't want to look it up, and God, who could blame him? Do you know how many guys have started at quarterback for Kansas since Todd Reesing? And so I knew we'd written it. You'd written it. Keegan's written it. It's also changed since 3 guys have started this year. So just did a little bit of quick math and helped him out with that answer so he could have a better day. And Jalen Daniels is the 15th. The 15th since the 2010 season to start a game at quarterback for Kansas. The 3rd this year, right? I mean, McVitie technically started a game. Yeah. And so he counts. He gets thrown in there just as much as DeAndre Ford gets thrown in there out at Rutgers. So thankfully, Keegan had documented that and written it, and I went back and looked at one of his when Peyton Bender became number 11. And then you had Stanley as 12, and then you have the 3 this year. So just a remarkable thing. And
I honestly thought it would be higher.
Yeah, I know. But then you start thinking about it, and that's really high, considering a guy could play 2, 3, 4 years even. I mean, so, the only reason I bring that up is just because the Jalen Daniels thing continues to be an interesting part of this story and a part of this program and a part of the future. I mean, we've talked about him a ton. We've talked to him now, and I think each week, even if you don't think KU has a chance to win the game or even be in it, which they don't this week, but watching and paying attention to Jalen Daniels is worth your time a little bit. Now, if it goes south and you want to go rake your leaves, yes, do that. I get it. But it's worth it because this kid is all in. and they're all in on him, and that's exciting. And maybe there's a glimmer of something there. So if nothing else, the next 4 games will give us a better indication if that is actually true or not. And then he's still got to go prove it for a year or 2 after that. But I think that as we wind down, Benton, I'm sure you're already well on this path, but as we wind down, that's going to be what we continue to focus on with this team is what's next. And these young guys like Prunty and Logan and obviously Daniels and Highshaw and guys like that. I mean, is them playing now really going to help? And only time will tell us the answer to that, but that's sort of the next step in the puzzle that we have to figure out and use specifically. Shane, any final thoughts before we get out of here? Basketball or football related? We got plenty of each coming up in the next several weeks, but any final thoughts?
Just to be different, because Benton talked about the offense, I was just going to say that the defense building off 13 quarterback hurries against Iowa State is something to watch this week against Oklahoma.
Sure.
Spencer Rattler obviously is good, but he's a young quarterback, and if you can get in his face and make life a little bit more difficult than him, then maybe that's the key of making this somewhat close.
I love it.
As in cover the spread, not actually winning.
No. Yeah, don't worry. Nobody mistaking that. Ben, any final thoughts? You already kind of did, but I'll give you one more chance before we hit stop.
Yeah, I'm excited, as I'm sure a lot of KU fans are, that basketball season is almost here. That's something to look forward to during a year 2020 that has had not a lot of things to look forward to. So
well said. Well said. Yeah. Well, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody has a good November coming up and staying safe, taking care of themselves, and staying sane, really. So that's what we're going to try to do. That's why KUsports.com is here. That's all the time we have here on the KU Sports Hour. Thanks for checking out this episode, and we'll talk to you guys again real soon on another episode. Take care of yourselves, everyone.